don't remember much about the Punisher, to be honest, but I'm pretty sure that corrupt police forces was like a pretty big pain point for him. They're attracted to the brutality, but the brutality is symbolic of Punisher's stance, which is very black and white.
Yeah.
It's like, you do bad things should happen to you. Mm-hmm. It probably makes your job a lot easier if you can look at the people as bad people and you are interacting with people at their worst most of the time. Mm-hmm. Crazy Stupid Podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if this is your first time watching, we'd love it if you could hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell so that you are aware of when we post things.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Stupid Podcast. My name is Esther.
And I'm Adrian.
And we are here today to talk about Daredevil Born Again, episode 3, titled In the Hollow of His Hand.
I'm real emotional right now.
Yeah, that was really sad.
Before we even begin, spoilers for the episode. So if you haven't watched Daredevil episodes 1 through 3, please do not watch this.
Yeah, go watch the show.
Yeah, I experienced so many emotions.
I was really surprised. But I guess it's like, where was the story going to go? Because like, you really can't just put the mask back on a guy. Like that's not how that works.
And just shout out to the actor Camar de los Reyes. So he did pass away in 2023 due to cancer, which is just kind of sad because I felt his pain.
Yeah, he did his big one with this. Let's talk. I think like they could have chosen any number of like the other vigilante heroes that exist in Marvel.
The same idea.
I think it was so intentional that they chose White Tiger, specifically a Puerto Rican superhero and character, because that opening scene with Matt and Hector is talking about happening in Puerto Rico with the tourists and the coquis and all of that stuff. In so many ways, like his identity as a Puerto Rican are starting to emerge as themes in this season.
Yes.
Puerto Ricans are marginalized people in multiple ways, right? Like in New York, for instance, like Puerto Ricans are marginalized in many of the same ways that other people of color are marginalized. And they talked about that in this episode a little bit with the street interviews, where you had people being like, I don't think he's going to get a fair trial because he's Puerto Rican. But then also what's happening to Puerto Rico mirrors some of the themes in the show right now about identity and about gentrification because of the things that are happening on the island. In his little monologue at the beginning, he talks about how like coquis are like a big, like Puerto Ricans, that's like, it's like a national thing, right? Like they put it on t-shirts and they put it on like posters. Like it's a sense of pride. It's something that is like very characteristic and it's unique, I believe, to the island. But he talks about how tourists coming there don't understand that, don't appreciate that, and they just think of them as a nuisance. And there's like this disconnect between like appreciating a place for what it is and trying to co-opt it and make it your own. And that's the same process that we see happening with gentrification that I think we've kind of started to see them start to bring up in the show.
Yeah.
Right now, what's happening on the island of Puerto Rico is like people are buying up the land there. People from outside of the island are buying up the land. They are buying up the beaches. They are buying up all these properties that used to be publicly available to actual native Puerto Ricans. And now they are not because they're being bought up. They're being used to build luxury apartments and resorts and all of these things that are not servicing the actual people who are from the island. And because of that, there is like this fear, at least I have this fear about the island over time losing its identity, losing its ownership of that place because it's just going to be bought up. And as it gets bought up, Puerto Ricans leave. I worry, and I think many Puerto Ricans worry about like a loss of identity and ownership of this place. And I think that kind of parallels to some of the things that Matt's dealing with personally in this season surrounding his own identity, how he sees himself, what his role is in this place, and the conversation around vigilantism and its role and who gets to own that and define that, and whether or not it will last and survive and whether or not it should last or survive. I just think that there's so many ways that the identity of this character parallels to the show, and I think it was a really intentional choice.
We're sort of on the same page here because this entire trial that White Tiger is going through is not just a metaphor for Matt and Daredevil, but it feels like he's fully on trial for everything that we've seen Daredevil really go through over the last like quote unquote 4 seasons, if you're sort of including this one. And it's not just the things that Matt is saying about Hector and White Tiger, but it's also what the prosecutor is saying.
Hawk.
Yeah. Where he's talking about vigilantes and the idea of like, it's not just a matter of a bad person and a good person. Good people can do bad things, which that's kind of what Daredevil does in episode 1 when he loses his cool after what he sees happen to Foggy. And he throws Bullseye, Dexter, off the roof. The moment he says that, you can see Matt Murdock get kind of uncomfortable in his seat. And it points back to what we were saying last week about how Fisk calls him out. And you can see that Matt hasn't reconciled with the things that he had to do with Daredevil. It's also just an overall metaphor of the conflict that he has. Do I need to trust this system that I have seen fail these working class people in New York City over and over and over again? This is where I feel like so far we just haven't seen it on the live action with Batman in particular. I think there's so many similarities that you can have with Daredevil and with Batman. You have these quote unquote ordinary, so to speak, individuals who want to step in as superheroes because the quote unquote justice system sort of fails them. I just feel like Daredevil, the TV show, has done such a better job of making the motive way more, not just believable, but you just feel for the people more. Like, yeah, both Bruce Wayne and both Matt Murdock have this inner conflict that they're dealing with, but the fact that we're spending way more time with the people, whether it's in Hell's Kitchen or in this case in New York City, makes the motive for Matt to put on the Daredevil mask land so much more. And it's something that we're probably going to see him go through this with Hector when we find out that he sort of passed away. But even throughout the first few seasons of Daredevil, there's this tug and pull that he's going with of like, do I trust the system? Do I not trust the system? But what happens when these institutions are exploiting the system? Who protects regular people then? Who protects them from these powerful bureaucratic systems that are set up that know the ins and outs of the law in ways that like regular folk just don't? That motive, I feel like, just lands so much better, and it makes it more impactful when he does go back to put on the mask, when he does go out and fight crime at night. Not to say that Batman can't do it, I just haven't seen it done live action as well as we've seen it with Daredevil.
I think that's a result of their backstory. Matt Murdock grows up amongst the people, amongst this community. He's not coming from money. He's not coming from wealth. Yeah, they're both orphaned, but he is coming from a completely different class background. And so he grows up in connection with the community that he is trying to save. That's not the case for Bruce Wayne. He grew up apart from them because he was rich and wealthy. And so for Matt Murdock, it feels very much like he's reaching across and connecting and saving the people that he is amongst,
that he knows.
Yes. But with Bruce Wayne, it feels like he's reaching down, like he's coming from his mansion and his bat cave and all of this stuff. He's emerging from those places to enter into the city and save it. But it's a completely different dynamic because these aren't your people for real.
No, like Matt, he's at these bars with Jonesy's bar with Foggy and Karen, and he knows all the people there. Foggy even makes a joke of like some of the people that they're hanging out with, he knows are criminals, but like the nuance that they have about their humanity is what makes Daredevil so special, you know? And
he does the work during the daytime too.
Yes.
He's a lawyer, and not just any type of lawyer, a defense attorney who takes on the tough cases.
The other thing that I wanted to sort of touch on that makes these Daredevil episodes so freaking good, bro, is that Matt is constantly looking for a reason to not be Daredevil because he understands what he's capable of doing to people and what Daredevil does to him as an individual, as a Catholic person. And I think he wants to be even more careful about putting on that mask because his moral compasses are gone, right? The father is gone. Foggy's not there. Karen's not there. So the people that would probably reel him back in aren't really in his life anymore. And I think he really wants to believe, like he says to Hector, there are other ways that you can do good. And you see him when he feels like he's won the case with White Tiger and he's in there and he's sort of fiddling with the horn of Daredevil. He's probably convincing himself, maybe I can keep doing
like this works.
But then it's like over and over. It's like Daredevil's cursed because every time he wants to try to give the system a chance, it's like the system won't let him. And it's like it pulls Daredevil back in. We saw it happen so many times in seasons 1 through 3. And it's just tragic that this happens again.
It makes me wonder how they're going to handle the moment when he finally does put the suit back on, because I think in a lot of TV shows that would be like a very triumphant, like you've been waiting for this. They'll play like the majestic music. They'll have the big, they'll pause when he's in the suit again.
Yeah.
But I wonder how they'll handle it this time, because there's a bittersweetness to it.
Yes.
It's like, there's the anticipation from us as fans who have been waiting for the moment, but there's also the understanding that this is not something that Matt actually wants to do. It's something that he feels he has to do because he's cornered and doesn't have any other options. And it's also cost him so much. So I'm curious to know what that will feel like in terms of the tone.
Yeah.
The scene that we get when he goes back into the courtroom and it's empty.
Yes.
The visuals of that were so similar to somebody, like the lighting with the light coming in through the windows, etc. Courtrooms already just kind of resemble churches, honestly.
Sure. Yeah, it's true.
So there was like a lot of visual similarities between that and him going to a cathedral or a sanctuary. And to me, that felt like a representation of the way that he has put aside his old systems of justice and his faith in those systems and his own personal faith that kind of, in a way, sort of, it was heavily involved in his decision to be a vigilante. At times it was what causing him to question it, and at times it was not. But he definitely saw himself as some sort of actor of like divine justice.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing that is sort of being replaced by this faith in the system. Like physically, this space that he's in, we still haven't seen him go to a church, but we have the scene that very visually mirrors that, where he's in a courtroom instead. And so I think that is kind of showing us, the viewers, like this is where he is at right now. He is trying his hardest to replace everything else that he was believing before with this faith in the system itself, that it will work and it will do what it is supposed to do.
Yep.
And it's sad because it does. And then an outside factor comes in and messes it up.
Yeah.
And we gotta talk about Fisk too, because it's just something real crazy about the fact that you're out here scapegoating and targeting vigilantes and you have a whole corrupt police force. What are we doing?
This is what I was feeling throughout this entire episode of like, so far, I will give credit to Marvel and how they're handling the power that police have, especially in large cities, right? A lot of times when people think about like states like New York or Maryland or LA, they think of these places, DC, these places that are like super liberal. The government is very pro-cop. Yeah. The moment you throw that slogan of a cop on a liver on anybody, it is like a stain that cannot come off. I know it's sort of dramatized with like police officers doing things behind the scenes, which there are examples of cops doing that. But I just sort of felt like if you didn't have someone like Matt Murdock in these courtrooms, bro, these people would lose. Because it's not just the police, regular police officers. It's the power that the police have. It's the unions. It's the mayor. It's the governor. It's judges. It's politicians that cannot risk the political capital it would cost them. And so it can sometimes feel like you're all by yourself. You're going up against this system where it's just not designed to help you when you're going against this group of people that is off limits, regardless of what they do.
I'll be so interested to see how they tie in the Punisher. All these cops got the Punisher tattoos and the Punisher everything. I'm just really confused because I'm like, I don't remember much about the Punisher, to be honest. But I'm pretty sure that corrupt police forces was like a pretty big pain point for him.
Yes.
Okay, so what are we doing?
There's also almost like a psychology to it as well, because what attracted them to the Punisher was solely the violence that he inflicted on humans.
Yeah.
That was the only thing.
You're talking about in real life?
In real life and in the show.
Okay.
Not his code, not whatever ethics that he sort of stood by. It was just the mere fact that
brutality.
They saw. Yes.
They're attracted to the brutality, but the brutality is symbolic of Punisher's stance, which is very black and white.
Yeah.
It's like, you do bad things should happen to you. Mm-hmm. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, which is then juxtaposed to somebody like Matt, who is trying to keep space for some sort of restorative possibility, right? It probably makes your job a lot easier if you can look at the people as bad people. the people that you're interacting with all the time. And you are interacting with people at their worst most of the time. When I read that book, Ghetto Side, journalist spends all this time with a bunch of cops and detectives talking about how they handle crime in predominantly Black communities, specifically homicides. But like, as they were talking to these cops and detectives and police officers, you see them like wrestling with, like literally wrestling with themselves and with some of the notions and biases that are starting to creep in to their psyche because of how they are interacting with these communities, right? Like, they are interacting with these Black communities. Many of them are not from the community, do not live there. But when they are interacting with them, it's always under the pretext of a crime has been committed. And when they're there, they're seeing that there's not always the level of cooperation that they would expect there to be. And you hear them like literally in the book be like, I don't understand it. What's going on? It's like they're walking around this notion of Black criminality and they're not quite willing to say it because they know how it sounds, but you can see like that's the conclusion that they're coming to because of how they are interacting, the way that they are always interacting with this community.
Yeah.
And I feel like that lends itself to the Punisher's mentality very well. It's just like, well, they're doing bad things, then they gotta be bad people.
Yeah.
And it's just not that black and white. But the thing is, like, I don't know how sold Matt is on that being wrong, because Matt's also wrestling with this idea of good versus bad and good versus evil, right? They have like that, one of the interviewers on the street has that thing where he talks about like, you know, you've got good versus evil, you have evil versus evil, you have good versus good. Like there's these binaries that everybody is kind of floating around and talking about. And even Matt is kind of bought into some of those too. So I feel like we're really going to have to do some discussion about unearthing those via maybe some of the interactions between Punisher and Matt. I don't know, but it definitely seems like we're leaning in that direction to just talk about like just the complexities of human people.
Yes.
And a person doing a bad thing does not mean that they are deserving of bad things, and it does not mean that they're incapable of doing good things. I feel like Matt is going to have to see that in himself first so that he can really apply that in action when he does decide to put the mask back on again.
This episode of Daredevil I thought was phenomenal. This is exactly what I need more of in the MCU.
No fight scenes in the whole episode.
And it had been a while. It has been a very long time since I have felt multiple emotions in a Disney Plus Marvel TV show.
Yeah.
I think the last time I felt this many emotions in general was probably Wakanda Forever. And that's not just solely because of how good the movie is, but because we lost Chadwick Boseman. The reason I really think is like you were getting at, it's the groundedness that we're able to explore with Daredevil. And I know that fans have been desperate for wanting to get some of that with Spider-Man as well, because that's what kind of makes characters like him and Daredevil kind of special. Like they're in the city, they're trying to fight for just like the regular guy. It's a lot more relatable. I felt like it was just a beautiful story that was almost like a TV show first, with the reminder and moments that we're still dealing with a superhero IP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
You know?
It does make a lot of sense. I would agree. There's definitely, I mean, there's only been 3 episodes. This is my favorite one of the 3.
Yes,
for sure.
100%.
And yeah, it was the least like superhero-y. It was, I mean, it was a courtroom drama essentially.
Yes.
I think like you need a good dose of this to make the moments that we know we will get, right? We know we will get like your classic superhero Marvel Daredevil moments. We know all of that's coming. Yeah. But in order for those things to still mean something, you need this. My only other thing is I thought it was a really beautiful touch to end the credits with the sound of the cookies. I thought that was really nice, very emotional. It made me very sad.
Yes,
but
they did their homework.
A really nice touch. And knowing now that the actor was Puerto Rican, it also adds another layer to that, kind of like paying homage to the character and to the actor himself.
Yeah. I still don't know what to make of Fisk and Vanessa. There's a slow build up to the deterioration of their marriage. What I know for certain is she will not be satisfied with the world Wilson Fisk is forcing her to be in.
No.
Absolutely not. She has become very much thrilled with being able to be this crime boss, and then you kind of just taking that away from her, really, with no choice in the matter, really.
I think if she had really put her foot down and said, no, don't do it, I low-key think he would have listened. I also think part of what's happening is that Vanessa was never bothered by Fisk's more brutal, violent tendencies in nature. In fact,
she
from
said
what
she was
I remember,
fascinated by it.
she was fascinated.
That was the word she used. Yeah,
she's always liked that about him. What we're seeing now is he is trying to temper that and tame that, and I don't think she likes or respects this version of him.
No, nope.
So that's going to be an issue. I mean, for sure.
The look that she gave Fisk after he won the mayor race was like the second episode of Daredevil. Also, I think what she's picking up on is that Fisk still has plans within plans, and she addressed that in season 3 of Daredevil. It was like, you're still not letting me into like what's going on up here. And so when Vanessa sort of pressing Fisk on the idea of like, oh, so you're saying that a little bit of chaos can lead to something beneficial for us. Fill me in on this. Like, tell me what you think can happen. And he doesn't do it, which again is going to build that resentment because it ties into what you're saying about her not being attracted to Wilson Fisk sort of taming the violence. But it's also leading to the fact of like, here we go again. Like, I thought we got through this and you're still not letting me play an important role in this marriage partnership that
especially
we have.
After I've proven myself 100% capable.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. Well, those are our thoughts. We'd love to hear what you all thought about this episode. As always, we love the conversations that you guys bring in our comment section. So let us know in the comments below. And with that, we will see you all next week. Take care, everyone. Peace.
Cancel your trips to Puerto Rico. Don't vacation there. Bye.
Cool.